Authorities who get a road hazard call aren't prepared for the puzzling sight. Residents of Castle Rock in Cowlitz County, Washington considered their city a rather sleepy place. With an average population of 2,000, the community is covered in dense forests and peaceful nature trails. Not exactly a city with excitement around every corner. That's what made the call that authorities received one Saturday evening so unusual. It had been a quiet day, after all, and the Cowlitz County Police were just settling into their nightly patrol when they got the first alert. Something was wrong in Castle Rock. Well, not wrong exactly, just out of place. "It just doesn't sound right," said Troy Brightbill, the chief criminal deputy at the sheriff's office. When he first heard the strange story called in by a truck driver, he was skeptical at best. Dispatchers had trouble understanding the driver's story. Someone made a wrong turn? Were they hurt? Did they need an ambulance? "I'm sorry," dispatchers told the stunned Good Samaritan, unsure if they'd heard him correctly. Had he said feline? No, the driver asserted. Something far bigger than a cat was in the middle of the road, and when the dispatchers finally understood what he was seeing, they immediately alerted the authorities and Washington's Department of Fish and Wildlife. When police arrived on the scene, they heard the weirdest sound yet: roaring. How on earth did a lion end up in Castle Rock? That's when they saw where the sound was coming from, and though the creature was missing a wild mane of hair, it definitely had whiskers. In the middle of the road was a sea lion. As the authorities looked on with shock, the sea lion waddled from one side of the road to the other, roaring and barking all the while. For the wildlife officers, three things were certain right from the first glance. The sea lion was female, around 600 to 700 pounds, and was clearly lost. Still, the weirdest part for Scott Schroeder, one of the responding wildlife officers, was the location. He described the landscape as a rolling, forested area. Not exactly a sea lion's usual haunt. But the authorities couldn't focus on the why of it all just then. They had to figure out how the heck they'd get this enormous sea lion back to where she belonged, without hurting them or hurting her. Unfortunately, sea lion wrangling isn't exactly covered at the police academy. The road they were all gathered on was dark, winding, and surrounded by thick woods. If an officer got too close, her small barks turned into much scarier sounds. Bone-chilling roars. She was very aggressive, Schroeder said, of the alarmed animal. If you got within 20 feet of her, she would go after you. And to make matters worse, the authorities were quickly picking up on the sea lion's most unexpected skill. She was fast. As we've learnt, they're fairly mobile on land, Brightbill said. Schroeder said the sea lion would lunge, like an alligator, at anyone who would get too close. She was certainly full of spit and vinegar, he described, until she revealed another surprising trait. There was no other way to say it, Schroeder declared. They're fairly cute animals. It couldn't be denied, even to the shaken authorities, that the sea lion looked good on camera. She even posed for a selfie with Sergeant Corey Huffine. One thing was clear to the officers. No matter how threatening she was, they wouldn't be able to wrangle her back into the water any time that night. They hoped that monitoring her overnight while she waddled her way back to the water would be the extent of their involvement, but they were wrong. The police received another 911 call and then another. The problem was it just kept moving, Brightbill said. She kept moving all right, just not towards the Columbia River where she had come from. By the time the other officers found her, she was 2 miles from home. They couldn't just sit and stare at her any longer. They needed backup. By Sunday afternoon, crews from the Humane Society, the county's Public Works Office, the State Wildlife Department, and the Sheriff's Office had all arrived. With one unified plan. Their mission? To corral the animal all the way back to the river. The abundance of smelt in the Columbia River made it a popular home for hundreds of sea lions. It was imperative that this wayward sea lion made her way home, and only together could they get her there. This was easier said than done. The team used large planks of wood to lead the jumpy sea lion in the right direction, making sure to keep their distance if she got frustrated. I think everybody had a face full of sea lion breath more than once, Schroeder described. Sea lion breath or not, the mission finally had a lucky break when the sea lion found herself in someone's driveway. The crews grabbed their wooden plank shields and, as carefully and non-threateningly as possible, slowly guided her towards a cage. The crews worked slowly in hopes that doing so would keep the sea lion from lashing out. She inched closer and closer to the cage, and for a moment, the authorities could almost taste victory, until she suddenly veered off course. But as quickly as she'd turned, she was right back where they wanted her to be, inside the cage. Finally, the sea lion was off the road and out of harm's way, but the police couldn't relax just yet. With the sea lion in tow, the crews drove to Willow Grove Boat Ramp in Longview, where they returned her to the Columbia River. Schroeder, Brightbill, and the other crew members watched her swim away with just one thought. They knew that the tale of the lost sea lion and her perplexed rescuers would go down as one of the most bizarre and adorable happenings in Castle Rock. Surprisingly, though, many critters find themselves lost in quiet towns like Castle Rock.